These Selkirk Luxx paddles and I kind of have a love-hate relationship. We definitely got into some heated arguments on the court, but as all great couples do, we worked through it and we are even closer because of it. Let me tell you about my paddle relationship with the new Selkirk Luxxes. Real quick, I wanted to jump into some basic specs. The spec sheet for all three of these paddles will pop up now. Pause the video and take a look if you'd like. The Selkirk Luxx line of paddles is the next generation of the Project 003 paddles that came out in August 2022. I was extremely excited to try these out and see what the differences were. Once I had them and started playing, it felt like these were a slightly more polished version of the 003 line. The sweet spot is even larger, which is hard to imagine. They all had a tiny bit more pop, and the spin was for sure improved. But the thing that surprised me the most was how similar the Invicta, Epic, and the S2 felt to each other. It honestly feels like the same paddle, just with different lengths and widths. The Invicta has the most pop out of the bunch because of its elongated shape, then drops off a bit with the Epic and then the S2. The control is the same story, but goes from the S2 with the most and then ever so gradually gets less control from the Epic and then Invicta. But the thing is, I don't think the Luxx line is a drastic improvement from its predecessor. Selkirk put almost all of their focus on improving the strengths of the 003 much more than its weaknesses. When a new version of a paddle comes out, I expect the weaknesses of the paddle to be significantly improved upon, even more so than what the paddle excelled at. I was pretty disappointed by this. I thought with over a year in the making, they would have made more significant changes. All right, I'm gonna be upfront with you guys and say I wouldn't recommend these paddles to almost anyone in their stock form. For the $250 price tag, there's nothing that special or different about these paddles compared to the previous version to warrant that kind of price. But if you slap some lead tape on them, they become some of my favorite paddles that I have ever used. But first, let's talk about what I enjoyed about these paddles before the lead tape was added, because it wasn't all bad. To start off, these have to be the best defensive paddles in existence. I can sit in the transition area mid-game and hit resets for multiple shots and still feel in control and neutral in the point. This is what the pros feel like. It seems like they can reset every ball thrown at them and then stroll on into the kitchen line. I loved this feeling and it became addicting. I started to not care if my third shot was perfect to transition into the kitchen line because I knew I could, for the most part, easily reset whatever they threw at me and get into the kitchen line to start dinking. This is what these were made for, and Selkirk did it to almost perfection. With the absolute insane sweet spot size, it's a rare occasion to feel any kind of discomfort when hitting with these. And I'm talking about every shot in the book. One of the more notable improvements from the 003 to the Luxx paddles that was the most significant was the amount of spin it was able to generate. These have some top tier spin. Never did I ever get irritated because it was lacking in that department. My shots had that huge dipping arch that I love so much. I was relieved this was the case because there was honestly no excuse in 2023 to make a paddle with that spin. So, if the only thing you want out of a paddle is to hit the butteriest short hop resets and dinks of your life, then the stock Luxx paddles is what you're looking for. But if you want your paddle to perform well with any other shot than those, then that's too dang bad.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa. That's too damn bad.
All this paddle is a wonderfully soft pillow. Any kind of aggression in the stock form of this paddle will literally do you nothing. I have to swing out of my shoes for serves and drives for the ball to go anywhere. I constantly felt behind in hands battles because the pop is non-existent. Even when it came to smaller touch shots like thirds, small volley resets, and dinks, it lacked the plow through to get the ball to where I wanted it to go. I had to really exaggerate my follow through on these touch shots to keep the ball from going into the net. And this is what I was talking about before, where Selkirk didn't improve upon the previous version of this paddle's weaknesses. The 003 had garbage pop and power. The Luxx paddles have slightly less garbage pop and power. My playstyle is to try to construct every point to where I can get a ball that I can be aggressive on and then end the point. That has never felt so forced than with using these paddles. I played with the 003 for a while, and this was my same issue. But that's when the Selkirk Luxx and I decided it was best to go and see the best relationship therapist there is in the pickleball world. And that therapist's name is lead tape. Lead tape is the great pickleball paddle equalizer. Once you mess around and find a lead tape setup that you enjoy on a paddle, only then can you finally unlock a paddle's full potential. And that couldn't be more true than with the Luxxes. Without lead on these paddles, I would never choose to play with them. With it, they become some of my favorite paddles I have played with. Quick disclaimer, going forward in this review, I'm going to be talking about the Invicta and Epic only. Even with lead tape, I would never play with the S2. That thing feels more like a shield than a pickleball paddle. There is essentially zero room for any kind of two-handed backhand, and I find myself using that stroke more and more. I don't understand why Selkirk even makes this paddle. I would simply never recommend the S2 over the Epic or Invicta to anyone when they are the same price. All right, now for the fun stuff. Let's talk about what surprised me the most after adding lead: the power. Now, adding lead tape didn't transform this insanely soft control paddle into the new Gearbox Pro Power, but it did take it from intolerably soft to completely usable. Drives actually became my favorite shot to hit with this paddle. The lead tape added just enough power to where being aggressive wasn't an issue anymore. After playing with this paddle, I began to realize that pace isn't the only thing that matters when considering what a good drive is with a new paddle. Even though these drives have been far from the most powerful drives I've hit with a paddle, they have been my most effective. When I hit a drive with this paddle, I actually feel like it's a smart shot now. Lots of times when I hit a drive, I kind of cross my fingers and hope it goes well, which I feel like a lot of you can relate to, which is normal because it's just a riskier shot. But with this paddle, with lead tape, it didn't feel like a risk anymore. The extra weight added allowed me to easily dial in the depth of my serve within inches of the baseline as well. It allowed me to make this paddle's greatest weakness into a strength. Many people aren't aware that adding lead tape is often the key to make a mediocre paddle amazing. The pop with these paddles are now decent. I am now able to stay competitive in hands battles for the most part. I did have to be more prepared for those speed ups in order to keep up though. I still had problems if the person in front of me had a crazy poppy paddle like the new Gearbox Pro Power or something like the 6-0 double black diamond. I don't even know where to start when talking about control. The imagery that comes to my mind when trying to describe the control of these paddles is from a scene from one of my favorite sports movies, The Sandlot. It's the part where Smalls still sucks at baseball and is put in the outfield to try to prove himself to these kids that he can play with them. A pop fly is smacked right at him and he raises his arms and closes his eyes and basically prays to the baseball gods for a successful catch. And miraculously, he snags the ball. This is what hitting resets, dinks, and drops feel like with this paddle. Literally feels like you can close your eyes and swing at the ball and it will magically fall into the kitchen. Finesse shots have never felt so easy before. That's why I think I love these paddles coming from a tennis background. I don't really need more power, and with this, the control feels like a cheat code in a video game. That's why I tend to lean towards more control-oriented all-court paddles most of the time. This is exactly why pro tennis player Jack Sock, the Olympic gold medalist and the multi-Grand Slam winner, will be using this paddle on the Pro Tour. I'm excited to see him harness the power of his humongous forehand with this paddle's control and dominate. The sweet spot on the Invicta and Epic are truly ridiculous though, especially the Epic. This is where I can tell the most difference between these paddles. The Epic now has the crown for the best sweet spot in the game. They both give you the craziest dwell time sensation. It's almost like you can feel it in slow motion as the ball sinks into the paddle. My arm has never felt so relaxed when hitting a ball. This is reminiscent of how it felt to play with the original carbon paddles and the Electra Model E. The longer I played with the Luxx Epic and the Invicta, the more and more I didn't want to play with anything else. You almost develop a sense of invincibility when playing with this because it doesn't feel like anything can be thrown at you that you can't handle. This is with lead tape, of course. The only players I wouldn't recommend these paddles for people to try are those who have always played with the power paddle. You guys will not enjoy this. But if you are more of a control paddle slash all court paddle kind of person like myself, then I highly suggest you checking these out. The Selkirk Luxx paddles have a premium price tag of $250, but they put their money where their mouth is and offer a lifetime warranty. This is one of my favorite things about Selkirk. I myself have had 2 Selkirk Project 003 paddles replaced without question. That doesn't mean you can go and snap your paddle in half and then replace it, but when it comes to ensuring a great quality product, there are very few paddle companies that can even come close to Selkirk in this area. When it comes to looking for which paddle to play with, warranties is always a huge factor for me and is sometimes what sways me to pick one paddle over another. Just something to keep in mind. If you'd like to purchase one of these paddles and help support the channel, use discount code ADV-Briones at checkout and get yourself a $30 digital gift card. I hope I was able to assist you in figuring out what the next step in your paddle journey is. I am truly grateful for all of you for watching and letting me share what I love to do with you. I will catch you guys on the next review.